Me too.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Space Pals. It's our final episode for 2020, but we'll for sure come with more great news in 2021. And today we're doing a wrap-up of the year, because for space this year has been very good. Very, very good. And we have here Rick Tumlinson, Joey Roulette, and Raphael Roettgen to discuss all the things that's happened. Guys, could you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about your life? Joey, please go first.
Yeah, sure. I am a space reporter based in Washington, D.C., regularly writing for Reuters News. I cover basically all things space. Rick and Raph are the economy and finance experts here for the space industry. I like to usually focus more on the international side and the political and sometimes the business side of things. So yeah, space reporter.
It's our fun. Rick, what about you?
Yeah, I do space stuff. I'm the founder of Space Fund. We're a venture capital company investing in frontier enabling space startups. But I've been in the field a couple of days and engaged in lots of projects. I'm really focused more on the realization of the vision of humanity expanding into space. That's the cause. And then I work on different projects that have to do with it. This year, for a couple of years, it happens to be venture capital. A couple of years from now, who knows?
Raphael, what kind of magic do you do?
Yeah, I haven't been in space as long as Rick. Clearly, I try to invest in space companies as well. So actually, Rick and I, we share some of the same exciting companies, like our friends at Space Perspective, stratospheric balloons. And I also try to, again, less time than Rick, but I try to do my part in educating people and get them excited about space. So we have the Space Business podcast, and I recently released an introductory book on space business, just in German, just to be annoying, but maybe we'll translate it.
Maybe more people will speak German now in space then. So, vielleicht. Guys, the first question I have for you, as Joey has already mentioned, you come from very different backgrounds and you have very different experiences in space. I'd like to ask you to outline the three main events for space for 2020, and maybe the three main, or one for 2021. Rick, let's start with you.
Oh, great. I'm actually writing an article right now where I'm trying to make a suggestion to the new administration that they're looking, something that's unifying and non-political, and that they would do well to pay attention to what happened last year. And if you think about it, in the middle of this horrible pandemic, in the middle of, here in the US, the Black Lives Matter movement, things like that, there were a couple of events, only a couple of positive events outside of the vaccine that got everybody's attention, and that was the flight of the Dragon, and the flight of the Dragon, the return of the Dragon, and then the Starship. I think that, to me, that's one of the biggest things in space. Seeing the offerings coming out, such as Virgin and things like that, moving into the realm where people can actually own shares in space companies. Of course, that's a big deal. And then the new administration coming in, the election of a new administration, which means we're going to be seeing some changes in space, which I'm sure we'll get into later. That would probably be it.
Okay, Joey.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that the first crewed launch from American soil in over a decade was the highlight of 2020. I mean, that's what so many people in the space industry have been working towards, and that's like a huge geopolitical milestone too for the U.S. And it starts, a different kind of partnership with the United States and the Russians. So I think that's like one of the biggest things. And in a lot of areas, space was kind of like, a break from all the horrible things that were happening this year. So I think generally anything that happened was pretty highlightable. The Starship launch, and then I think what the first photo of the black hole this year, or was that late 2019? I can't remember if
That
that
was
was
2019.
okay. Gotcha. That was probably like a sciencey side of something that happened recently, but that's not in 2020. But yeah, I think SpaceX really had a good year this year, and they were kind of at the forefront of a bunch of different space issues, and I think that's they kind of steal the spotlight there. I think the Artemis Accords is another highlight of this year. It's setting up a legal regime for exploration in the future, which I think is important. Some people might not kind of see the potential in that right now, but I think in the future it's definitely going to be important too. So that's one other potentially positive thing that came out of 2020.
Okay. I like how you're still in unison, more or less. Raphael, give us the European perspective.
I mean, gee, the third one to speak. I mean, so obviously, I'm going to say the Dragon demo launch, and then followed by the Crew launch. I mean, that has to be the highlight. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The other guys also mentioned the Starship high altitude flight, and being a SpaceX shareholder, and I know Rick is as well. I was hugely pleased with that because, and again, guys, it doesn't matter that it crashed when it came down. Like, SpaceX has proven time and again that they know how to do propulsive landings. Ironically, in 2020, that is not the difficult part. The fact they were able to do atmospheric flight, the belly flop, without propulsion, it has never been done before. On the first try, it was absolutely amazing. So that's number 2. Number 3, shout out to I know this is not Europe, I apologize, Stacey. Shout out to our friends at Astra, because I wanted one other private company outside of China. We can't get the Chinese outside of China to reach, if not orbit, to at least reach space. And Astra did that just a few days ago.
Okay, so I think that obviously, despite COVID, everyone was so happy with SpaceX and Dragon and Starship, and it is like a year of space, I think, because people didn't have parties or concerts, and people were so excited for live streams. And I would say that to me, 2020 was very important because people have found an opportunity and a way to communicate to each other. And there are so many great things happening, including, I mean, I love this show. Obviously, I love Raphael's podcast. I love all of the conferences that happened online. And I think there has not been this many gathering with such a varied audience happening ever. So it's absolutely great for space. But since we all agree that SpaceX has been the number one topic for the space community this year, let's start with them then. Elon Musk has had a lot happening this year, right? Including his routes on Twitter. He had COVID. He moved to Texas and created an exodus from the Silicon Valley. What do you think is next for him? Who wants to go first?
Good question. I'll let Rick go. I feel like he has something.
Well, first of all, I want to give a mild correction to Raphael, and that is that the belly flop that you mentioned was actually pulled off in 1995 by the DCX, which was a project that Elon will give homage to. There was a reunion a few years ago, the DCX team. He actually called into it. And that was a vehicle. I did a YouTube video of it. There's actually a video on YouTube. It was a demonstration of vertical takeoff and landing. And they called it the swoop of death at the time. And then it did that and landed. And I think the first time it did that, it did not blow up on landing, but it did later. And it was under the command, interestingly, of Pete Conrad. And I know Elon will give credit to that too, as having been there. But it was an amazing feat, especially given the fact that Elon's rocket plans are funded to go to orbit, whereas this one was just a demo of some of this maneuverability. What's next for Elon? Well, hopefully he'll take some of my advice as to where the best Mexican restaurants are here in Austin. And show up there. I'm interested to see how he's going to maneuver here in sort of small town Austin. That's going to be really interesting. But what's next? Well, look, one thing that's really important to me to always get across whenever I have an audience is so that people understand when they're dealing with Elon and Jeff and people like myself, you're not looking at necessarily the traditional implementation of a business plan when it comes to space. I like to explain to audiences that they made their money so they could do space. They're not doing space so they can make money. And this isn't rich boys and their toys. It's about the fact that we have a shared belief in the future of life and humanity expanding beyond the Earth. That's it. That's the goal. If you start trying to read anything else into what those two high-profile people are doing, you're going to miss the boat because that's the goal. Now, along the way, can they pick off some government contracts? Absolutely. Can they make some money delivering satellites? Absolutely. If Elon left SpaceX, it would become a great satellite delivery company with some astronaut deliveries along the way. But the goal is to open the frontier. That's why we call it the space revolution. And to me, it's very important that that context be underneath all of the other discussions you have about this. So just want to put that out there.
Okay, cool. Okay, I love the idea of SpaceX being a delivery company without Elon.
What would happen? The board of directors would jump in, look at the bottom line, and say, "Yeah, we got this business going on. Let's do that."
And not delivery to Mars. Delivery to
No, Mars would go away.
Gone.
It would be gone. Yeah, you're right, man.
Okay, then Raphael, do you think Mars is coming for Elon or what?
Well, I mean, he's continuing to be vocal about it. Of course, in Elon time terms, he's continuing to say basically he would like to use the next close approximation. Well, no, that's not right. 2024, I think he's talking about for a Starship launch. I think in the near term, what will happen is I think there's a couple of events on the SpaceX side, obviously, that are very important. One is sort of switching on the Starlink network commercially, because that is providing a lot of the money that will be needed to go to Mars, I suppose. And second is that there will be a few more tests, obviously, with Starship on the high altitude flights, like landing the thing properly. But they will try for orbit. I hope they will try for orbit in 2021. And again, ironically, technically, that's not even the more difficult part anymore, right? Because I mean, they already had to throttle back the 3 Raptor engines to not go much higher, right? So if they want to go to orbit, they'll go to orbit relatively soon, I think, at this point.
Okay,
Yeah.
Joey.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think commercial service for Starlink is a huge thing to look for in 2021. And I think it'll also be interesting to see how Boca Chica takes shape. I mean, it's already, I wish I think somebody maybe already did this, but it'd be cool to have a satellite time lapse of how Boca Chica has changed in the past 2 years. And I think it'd be pretty crazy to see how much land they've cleared and what kind of infrastructure they've built up already. I know if you look on the Cameron County property map, you can see that Elon Musk and their LLC has been just buying up a bunch of properties at a really fast pace. So I think if they keep that pace going, who knows what it's going to look like 6 months from now, 9 months from now, especially with all these different target dates and the testing timeline for Starship. I think that'll be really interesting. And also, policy side for the localities in Texas, what other companies might join Boca Chica or bring the business there, what Elon Musk wants to do with the little canal that's over there. I know he's spoken about building some kind of sea-based launch platform. I think next year we might be able to see a lot of that take shape. But of course, none of that is possible if Starlink is not successful. I mean, not to say it's completely impossible, but that is a pretty important point is successfully switching Starlink service on and kind of getting past the beta phase. So I think that's, as far as Musk and SpaceX, that's I think the most interesting things to look for in 2021.
I realized we actually forgot to mention one very important thing. Now that Elon is moving down to Texas, I really hope, Rick, that next year we will have the Space Cowboy Ball again. And Elon will be there, I hope. We got to invite him.
Yeah. And going back to Joey, I'm such an idiot, because I knew when they were taking Elon on helicopter flights over Boca Chica, the Texas government people, and I didn't buy land, and I've been here in Austin and I didn't buy land, and so I'm not a real estate person, but boy, I wish I had some land down there right now. And it's funny too. Going back to Joey's comment, I was down there the weekend that they were supposed to launch, the Friday, meeting with the city manager of Brownsville, and Joe, you might want to talk to them. They're really trying to work hard. It's interesting, of course. SpaceX is just outside the city limits of Brownsville, so they're not reaping a lot of benefit from that right now, other than the people who are living in Brownsville, and they are really working hard to figure out how to leverage the fact that they might be the spaceport to the solar system, moving forward. So anyway, now I lost the question. What was the question?
There was no question at this point. We're just talking about it.
Okay, fine. That's good. Yeah, seriously, it is amazing, how quickly these things are happening down here, and I'm looking for some other places to start popping up too that are going to be, real spaceports, not these sort of made up spaceports, but real ones starting to kick into gear too.
Where do you think the next spaceports will be?
In the U.S., well, here, obviously Branson is going to eventually start flying, and what's it only been like 10 years, right? Since they got the grant from the state of New Mexico, several millions or tens of millions of dollars. I think that's a good one. And here's the interesting point. If you have horizontal runway-based launches, that opens up a lot of things. So they could actually, Houston announced one years ago. And I remember sitting down with the people in the Houston government going, dudes, you're not, I didn't use the word dude at the time, but you're not going to be, launching SpaceX, from outside of Houston. But Virgin Galactic, where you have, horizontal takeoff and landing. So, you could start seeing those kinds of launches. I'm waiting for somebody down near the equator to really get on it. Because they've got the equatorial assist that everybody wants. So I'm not sure exactly where it's going to be.
Well, I got to chime in on that one, obviously, because the part of me that is a Brazilian as well, Brazilian passport holder. So we have a perfectly good spaceport. It's called Alcantara, which is 2 degrees south, and it's not been used basically for like 20, 30 years. But the Brazilian government is now trying very hard to attract basically people who would like to use it, and that has some fantastic aspects, like it's 2 degrees south. It's basically on the water. There's no big population centers nearby in the flight path. So I'm not sure that's going to work yet, but on the other hand, there is obviously as people might know, we have something like 200 or so small launch companies, of course, most of which will not be successful, will fall away, but a handful will survive. And some of these small launch companies are now starting to pick, basically some spaceports for operations. So examples we have is ESA Aerospace in Germany picked Andøya in Norway and Kourou as well. And they might pick other spaceports, and there's some other small launch companies, and who knows, maybe we'll get some to Brazil and other locations.
That'll be interesting, I think.
Yeah.
May I ask a question on 2020 that interests me, guys? So I think some of the stuff that happened in 2020, we expected. Unfortunately, it happened. Was there something you guys thought would happen in 2020 that didn't happen?
Yeah, Boeing's OFT redo, and the SLS hot fire test. There's probably a few others, but those are the ones that stick out the most.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, so we'll see those next year, early next year. And then in speaking of what's to come in 2021, apparently, or as scheduled right now, the SLS first flight will be November 2021, but it's extremely likely to get slipped into 2022. So, but yeah, those two things were something that we had been expecting in 2020, but it slipped to next year.
Hopefully the first and last flight of SLS, but that's a whole separate topic.
What had been your hopes, Rick?
Oh, I not really. I don't really have anything. I just kind of completely adjusted my mind to what's been going on with COVID. By the way, which is helping teach us that we can live long periods of time in semi-isolation using electronic communication. So we are proving the case for long duration, human spaceflight here individually, right? Take away the time lags, the Mars Moon time lags, and here we are. But really, I hadn't really thought about that very much. Maybe my brain just dismisses things that don't happen and focuses on what will.
Raph?
I mean, following on something I think one or both the guys already mentioned, I'm the eternal optimist, so I would have thought that Virgin Galactic would have had a powered flight. So obviously by now.
Yeah.
But, we'll try again. Thank you. Come again in 2021. We'll try again. I also, again, I'm very happy Astra they didn't reach orbit, but they reached space. I was kind of cheering on Virgin Orbit and Firefly as well. But I guess, again, they'll try in 2021.
Yeah, what's the, help me with the timeline. With the Israeli lunar thing was last year, right?
Mm-hmm. Very sure.
Yeah.
That was 2019.
Yeah, it was 2019. Because I really love that mission and hope that somebody carries on there. And by the way, we haven't really congratulated the Chinese. I mean, or the Japanese. I think we're going to get into that later. But the Chinese, it gets me a lot of flack from people on my right. But they pulled off a hell of a set of missions in the last year. So.
Well, I think we have a question about that in the chat, actually, from Marco. Hi, Marco. Also, shout out to Yoav and Itai. If you're watching, please comment, because Yoav was the flight director for Bereshit, and Itai was one of the pilots. So Marco is asking, what are some of the dangers of the growing factionalism in the space community? Is it possible for multiple players to achieve similar goals with different ideologies? And how do we mitigate these risks in the community? I think this goes for both within US and also different governments in different states. So Joe, you're nodding. I guess you have something to say.
Well, no, I'm nodding about how good of a question that is and how awesome it'd be to have a good answer, but I think, right. I mean, it's not really a response, but my first thought is that I think space factionalism within the industry exists a lot online and on Twitter, and a lot of that doesn't extend to reality. But at the same time, there are people who have extreme views on, whether SLS should get canceled or whether we should stick with SLS for the next 2 decades or whatever. And that's like kind of the thorniest fight, but I honestly don't really have an answer for that. I think it'd be interesting to ask Jim Bridenstine or the incoming NASA administrator on how they kind of see, a way of maybe gluing those two ideologies together or kind of, healing the division that we see. But I don't know, Rick maybe or Raph, maybe you guys have a better response.
I'll let Raph go first, and then I'll
sum it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a good response on that. I mean, I just hope we're going to keep our act together. I know that was the most recent sort of like NASA-related decision in Congress was unanimous. I hope there's not going to be any sort of like political games around it. I mean, on a global scale, it's obviously going to be increasingly difficult to integrate. So, I mean, also for regulatory and existing law reasons to integrate everybody. I mean, I think we're just increasingly going into sort of a US-Chinese space race in some aspects. It's just going to be reality. If I had to take an optimistic view on that, I would quote Werner von Braun, one of my famous countrymen, who once was asked about, would it not have been better if the Soviet Union and US would have cooperated to go to the moon? And his response was, well, if they had cooperated, nobody would have gone to the moon. It was the competition which made it. But whatever, that's just one perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's interesting. Well, one could argue, I guess, the ISS, which is such an ambitious project, was born out of the cooperation between, U.S. and Russia, and that's like an example of accomplishment cooperation breeds. But I think, the tectonic plates of geopolitics right now in space are definitely changing, and I think again it's up to what the incoming NASA or Biden administration thinks and would want to do with Russia. I know there's a lot of questions right now on whether they're going to participate in Gateway, and there's for example, whenever I try to solve the question of whether they've firmed up any plans to provide an airlock for Gateway, because that's like the linchpin thing to know whether they're going to actually participate in the program. I've always gotten like, oh, well, we're still negotiating the agreement. But recently I got a response from Roscosmos saying that they deemed the airlock factor of Gateway impractical for their own state purposes. So it seems like they're kind of distancing more and more from participating in Gateway, and at the same time they're inching closer and closer toward building some kind of alliance with China. And whether or not that's real, whether they're going to actually sign an MOU with China to kind of counter the US or in some way, I'm not sure. I don't know if that's just a bluff to kind of help get some more concessions on what they want in the Gateway program, but I don't know. I think Gateway actually is a pretty interesting kind of focal point for determining who gets along in space in the next year, because we'll see what happens with that kind of partnership. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that question breaks into two parts for me. There is the factionalism in terms of the aerospace industrial complex, and let's call it new space or the frontier-oriented activities, and then there's national, international. Internationally, I think we should be working together as much as we can. Right before this, I was just tweeting about China. I mentioned it last week and took some flack on it. I think that look, we basically started the Chinese acceleration in their space program by kicking out a major scientist engineer who went back to China and off they went. I don't think you do any good by locking people out. You actually create your competition by doing that on the international relationship level. So I think we should work together wherever possible. As I said to a friend of mine, you have no problem with China when it comes to Walmart or your iPhone. So why not work with them in space? But trust but verify type thing. As far as factionalism in terms of the federal versus private sector, I'm the guy who labeled the Space Launch System as the Senate launch system. I think that program is an abomination, and we need to get rid of it immediately. It is an absolute disaster, and history will look back on it as such. In terms of Moon versus Mars, that kind of factionalism, I remember in the old days I used to have legendary fights with my buddy Bob Zubrin about Moon versus Mars, and we're on the same page basically now. And that is what I like to think of as all of the above. We've got to make that first 100 miles, and we need to make it economical, reusable, completely accessible. And if we can build that railway, then people can go wherever they want to go and do whatever they need to do there. But I think that the government pacing of these things, in other words, making sure that you're staying within the realms of what's acceptable to NASA or ESA or Roscosmos or whatever, is going to become less and less relevant in terms of human activities in space. Now, we could have races in science and those kinds of things, which are great, but yeah, I think they're going to become less and less relevant, and they should become less relevant.
Then my next question is, going from the same topic which we're following now, we have two poles right now, right? The world is again separating itself. There is the US leading Artemis, and then there is whatever is happening with Roscosmos, China, India, all the others. How do you think this is going to affect the space community? Because this is a very serious division in my view, because the Artemis Accords are going their way, and then everyone else is going their way. Is there ever going to be a meeting point, or is this like the end of cooperation as we know it?
That's a good question. I don't think it's the end of cooperation. As we know, I feel like the commercial space world kind of develops and operates separately and kind of in parallel to the international space, agreement developments that are going on. So I don't think if there's a collapse in international cooperation, between the U.S., Russia, or China, I don't think that I don't think it will really affect the commercial, U.S. commercial space sector as much, because that's simply the U.S. prioritizing its own kind of idea. If there is cooperation, I think there is a lot of room. There's more room for commercial opportunities. I mean, I know, for example, Luxembourg has a lot of space mining companies that they're really excited about, and if we can kind of bring that, kind of fuse that innovation in some way with the U.S., I don't know how possible or what mechanism that would be, but like that's just one kind of symbiosis that might make sense if cooperation is extended. But again, we seem to already be getting along quite well with Luxembourg, and the question is really on Russia and China, and I don't know how that would really affect commercial space developments that we're seeing. But Rick or Raph, what do you think about that kind of movement?
I'll let Rick go first.
I think I would do anything to avoid a confrontation with Luxembourg because they could crush it. But no, I'm kidding. Again, I'm all for cooperation. I'm very concerned. I'm less concerned about the private sector, the governments, international, national, working together to open the frontier than I am about allegedly well-meaning people putting in place laws and regulations that stop us from doing that. That concerns me more than what I see in the other aspects. I think that the lunar water issue is a very big one, and controlling those resources is going to be something we're going to have to deal with in the future. But again, I'm all for everybody getting involved. I just want to see more and more of that happening. I think that the private sector here in the U.S. Or just in the free enterprise nations, whether it's the U.S. or UAE or wherever, the private sector, especially the younger generation that's coming up with the ideas that they're putting out, which Raphael and I run into all the time as far as investing. There is some amazing stuff happening, and I think it'll start to come to maturity over the next few years. And I think we're on the edge of a really exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, I echo various parts of that. I think Rick is quite right in pointing out the moon issue. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the moon is reasonably big, right? But the interesting areas in terms of resources, water ice, it's just a few square kilometers. It's scary how small it is. So there's certainly potential for conflict there, and we got to be very, I think, careful how to approach that. However, I also echo what I think Rick was trying to get at, which if you look really out in the long term, establishing human settlements, I really hope governments are not going to screw them up, because I really have optimism that the people who are going to go out there and settle the moon and Mars they could be some of the most interesting people that we have here on Earth by definition, because uninterested people wouldn't go out there. They wouldn't have that pioneer spirit. So we could build some really amazing societies there, like in the same way it's happened in the past on Earth, right? Look at the US, look at Australia and other places like that. So I hope that existing governments on Earth won't screw that up, and I'm really like rooting for a libertarian, like really inspiring society coming up. And, like, you know, a big fan of Heinlein, Moon is the Harsh Mistress, and scenarios like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to add one thing I thought of while you guys were talking was, you know, where the commercial space sector and government action, international agreements kind of do merge is space safety, right? Like if there's not any kind of agreed upon standards for how we operate in space, that's obviously going to affect how commercial, you know, private companies extend their business models out of space. So that's, I think, one thing that governments have to kind of coalesce around and figure out in the future, and as things get shot up into space more and more. Space traffic management and debris mitigation, you know, being the specific important points that are going to really make operating in space in the future difficult or easy.
Yeah, to build on Joey's comment there, and I do want to comment, I see a good friend of mine making comments here, Luisa Fernanda Zambrano Marin. First of all, que lástima about Arecibo. Luis is a Puerto Rican hardcore patriot, and that was so sad, just so sad, seeing that thing falling apart. We need to rebuild that facility. But she was asking about mitigation, and Joey was starting on that. I think it's that kind of proactive responsibility, the sort of safety things. There was recently a report that came out from Aerospace Corporation, which I found fascinating and almost a canary in the coal mine for a future debate. And that is what happens chemically in the atmosphere when you re-enter and you burn up, the kinds of chemical compounds that are being put into the upper atmosphere. I think that our field needs to get ahead of that and really start understanding those, because those are the kinds of things where if you're irresponsible now, it'll come up and bite you in your first stage, let's say. And you know, we really need to start understanding what happens if you're going to be deorbiting tens of thousands of small communication satellites and larger objects. What does that do to the ozone layer? In the meantime, we also have to protect Sandra Bullock as far as space debris. And yeah, again, lots of cool work going on, but we also need to have laws and policies, for example, the right of salvage. How do you pass off ownership to somebody who goes up and salvages your upper stage? These things have to be worked out.
Yeah.
It's weird that we're talking about Mars and the moon and everything, but then yet one of the biggest problems of our generation talking about space would be space debris, right? And the legislation nor the technology, nothing is getting anywhere, unfortunately. We're taking probes from Mars, we're taking probes from asteroids.
What's not surprising, right? Because it's what we in economics we call the tragedy of the commons, right? It's sort of like everybody's putting their stuff up there, and there's just no incentive basically not to do it. And getting international cooperation on that, as always, is not going to be easy. My fear is it's going to take some major in-orbit event to sort of trigger people into action, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Just waiting for that bolt to go flying through the space station, and take somebody out. And human beings are very, very bad at anticipatory protection. COVID is the case in point, right? We dismantle, or the last administration dismantles the office in charge of making sure we're ready for that kind of thing here in the U.S. We're really bad at thinking ahead and getting ahead of the curve. Definitely need to work on those areas.
I think we'll get there. Joey, would you like to comment?
I agree. I think there's really no incentive in place right now for private companies to take care of these issues, or no monumental incentive, and I think it's really behooving the government and the international sphere to kind of take charge on it. And I'd like to say that we've already had a crazy debris events in the past that probably should have kicked us into gear and think of ways to prevent it, but that's just happened so far in the past, and I guess people don't really realize a need at this time for it, which is just kind of crazy to me. But yeah, I hope it doesn't get to another disaster in space that really kicks people into the mindset of protecting space. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe that'll come in 2021 too. Who knows?
Another question I had for you guys was, do you think, since we're mentioning private business all the time and private companies, do you think private companies is the way of pulling the world together? Do you think private companies will have the leverage and the strength to persuade governments into doing things? Because we can see that SpaceX is already persuading NASA to do great things, which maybe NASA wouldn't be doing without SpaceX. Do you think private can help?
One thing that I just thought of with that, Elon Musk was doing an interview with the Wall Street Journal right before his Starship test, and the person asked him, what is government's role? Where should government be in terms of SpaceX, and what role does government play when you guys are trying to throw these things into space? And basically he said, just step out of the way, let us do our thing, and don't inhibit our progress, which I think is understandable, but it could potentially be a problematic mindset because the government, needs to do things that companies aren't willing to do themselves. And I don't know. There's a lot of factors and ways to break that down, but that's just one thing that I thought of. So I think that kind of encapsulates the SpaceX viewpoint of that, at least.
Yeah. I mean, look, I happen to be working on a book. I'm not plugging it, but in the book I talk about, and I've talked about this whenever I do lectures, I call them the 3 keys to space. You have to be able to get to the place regularly, reliably, dependably, and eventually safely. Number 2, you need to be able to use the resources that you find there for anything you want to do. And number 3, you need governments that either support you or stay the hell out of the way. I'll add a little bit to that last one, and that is, when I was along, my friend Diamandis and I, we both had like asteroid mining companies for a little while. And one of the things that people would hurl at us is like, you guys are going for the wild, wild west or whatever. Aside from that being a false analogy, because most of the West was actually fairly tame, or it wouldn't have happened. But if you look at it, the idea of people being able to have a dependable structure to work within is critical. I had an investor sit down with me at one point and said, Rick, I know you've got the best engineers. I know that you guys are going to go out and be able to do this technologically. I just need to know that I have the right to own what you harvest and trade and sell it. So we're not looking for chaos out there. We're looking for a benevolent regulatory touch that allows to have some legal framework without inhibiting creativity and freedom. And we need that underneath.
Okay, before we hear from Raf, Joey has to go, unfortunately. So let's say bye-bye to Joey and hope we can continue this conversation, the 3 or 4 of us, next time. Joey, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Great discussion.
See you soon, Joey. Thanks.
See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Okay, Raphael. What can you tell us? Do you think private will save the world? Or do you think, should the government step out, or is the government actually helping the private sector?
So I hope you guys can hear me because you're a little bit broken up for me, Stacey. But
yeah, we hear you. 5 by 5.
Okay, great. I think you probably asked me sort of like the same to follow on what Rick was just commenting on, and I basically agree. So there needs to be, from the government side, again, this is just reflecting my, I guess, philosophical, political views. It's stay out of the way, basically, just guarantee a few basic things, a framework, so we can be productive. I mean, for those of you who are more into sort of political philosophy, it would be Frédéric Bastiat from France, something called The Law, a book he wrote, a while ago, about 150 years ago, which basically says, as a government, guarantee my property rights. That's sort of the most important. And other than that, get out of the way. That's
some good advice we should give the governments more often.
A lot of governments don't like that advice. It tells them they have very little power, and many politicians like to have power.
Right. That's all they have. Go ahead.
No, Rick, because I wanted to ask a question, but if you have something else, do you want to say?
Yeah, it was interesting because I got nailed a couple of weeks ago. There was an article about SpaceX talking about the legal regimes for their constellations. And they had mentioned the laws that they would use to govern on Mars. And there was an article in The Independent, and at the end of it, they talked to a SpaceX engineer. And he said in the article that they intend to follow the philosophy of the Earthlight Foundation's Declaration for the Rights and Responsibilities of Humanity in the universe, which I wrote. and it was interesting because it created a lot. I got a lot of commentary from that, shall we say. And the idea underlying all of that, forget my own document, but something that we need to look at is that those of us going into space, those of us who are part of this community, need to put together and begin to adhere to, follow, believe in, act from a new set of philosophies. We need to learn from the mistakes we've made. We need to learn from the terrible things that we may have done in the past. We need to learn about how to work together. A lot of the old arguments, debates, fights, battles shouldn't make sense as we open this frontier. Whether it's libertarianism or socialism, I don't really care. I'm a spacer. I have a philosophy that it is our job to protect life and to expand beyond the Earth. And that's the kind of thinking we need to really start creating within our community.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, a little evangelism there. Sorry.
No. It's great. But let me take you back to one of the ideas you had in a couple of questions before, Luxembourg. And we're slowly going into the financial part of this talk today. Luxembourg, Raphael, we can continue talking about the tragedy of the commons if you'd like, because Kieran has a question over there. But let's go to finance. Luxembourg has been one of the key players this year because they have a lot of startups coming from the US to Luxembourg, and that is sort of a gateway for the US into the European world, from what I assume. Can you please tell me which investments or acquisitions were you the most shocked with this year?
Raphael?
God. I assume you're asking in general, not sort of like stuff that I've done, right? Obviously.
Oh, you can plug your own stuff.
Hopefully I'm not shocked with my own investments. I think I'll speak for many people before I asked what people thought would happen in 2020 and didn't happen, I could have asked the other way around. What are some things that happened in 2020 and I would have not expected? And in all honesty, I didn't expect we would end the year with 2 SPACs announced, like $1 billion plus valuations of space companies going public via that SPAC route. I still don't know what to think about it. I really hope it goes well, because if it doesn't go well, it's not good for the sector.
Right.
But that was surprising to me. Those are very aggressive deals.
Mm-hmm. So that's the highlight for you.
I'm not sure I would call it a highlight, but it's. I think you asked me what was the most shocking in terms of investments, and that's for me is the most shocking to see Momentus and all credit. I don't want to talk badly about Momentus or AST and Science or about Mikhail or Abel. It's just that I'm purely talking about the financial aspects of that deal, the valuations, and what they're trying to pull off.
But do you think they'll fly? Do you think that was good? I mean, I like Momentus. They're fun. Huh?
I think they literally fly in terms of, I think you're asking about the deal. I mean, who knows? I mean, deals like this also depend on the market environment. The market environment at the moment remains very good for, as anybody can see who's looking at the stock markets. And there's obviously a lot of liquidity in the system. There was a lot of liquidity injected in the system because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of money flushing around. I mean, whenever you have a lot of money flushing around, it needs to go places, So I think barring some disaster in the market, I think both of these deals, they're trying to pull them off in the first quarter of 21. So they'll probably pull them off. Yeah. And again, to some extent, I hope they're pulling them off because, if it completely falls apart, that's not going to be good for the sort of space investment environment and convincing more, because we need to convince more investors to come into space. It's fine that I'm investing in space and my LPs and Rick and his LPs, but we're so, in the large context of finance, we're so tiny still. We need to get many, many more people involved in the space sector. And so they need to have the impression that space is, everybody understands it's a frontier and deep tech sector and it has risks attached, but we shouldn't, they shouldn't have the impression that they're running like irrational and unresponsible risks.
Rick, what's your 2 cents?
Well, as the politician says, I identify with what Raphael has just said. I think he's exactly right. People are trying to raise large amounts of capital, and they're using mechanisms that they think can work. And it is inherent, or it's incumbent on them to be responsible and make those business plans work, or it's going to be bad for everybody. There are some other great models out there. My good friend Dylan Taylor with Voyager Space Holdings, I think, is one of the absolute bright lights in what he is doing by going in and getting later stage companies and sort of basically he's following a model of taking companies up a notch that are already profitable and building a portfolio that way. I think that's a great way to go. The one area that I am not fond of right now is launch systems. There are too many. 100. It's almost like you have to look at your watch and say, how many are there today? But they've actually started dying off. There's well over 100. There's definitely room for under 20 and maybe under 10. So there's going to be a major wipeout there, and that bothers me a bit because I even wrote an article about this, about how boys like rockets and boys are investing in rockets. And yes, that is meant to be sexist against boys, but it is really, there's going to be the shakedown. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and that's going to be a challenge. So we encourage people to look at the other, maybe not quite so glamorous, but exciting areas as far as investment space. And then lastly, I'll say this, we do need to, Raphael kind of touched on this, we need to work out ways to enable more people to actually invest. And that's important.
Let me just follow on that, because Rick is saying a few very important things. And I totally agree with him on the launch companies. And this is really, with very few exceptions, that's probably not a good place to be for the reasons Rick mentioned. So I get most annoyed. So how can I say this? Investing in venture capital carries risk. And, if a professional investor like a family office invests, in venture capital or directly in a space company and it doesn't work out, that's part of the game. That's fine. You know what you were doing, presumably. Where I get annoyed is if people, like smaller people, who maybe weren't told about all of the risks, get hurt. So that's why I'm kind of very, cautious with the SPACs, because the SPACs, because they're going to be publicly listed, that means small retail investors, like mom and pop investors, can go in them. And if those SPACs don't go well, obviously those retail investors can lose all of their money potentially. The other thing which I forgot to mention in terms of like shocking deals in 2020 is, of course, the UK government deciding to help bail out OneWeb. I'm still not convinced this is the best use of the British taxpayers' money, but that's a longer discussion.
Talking about OneWeb, unless Rick, you have something to add. Okay, so Raphael, we did this show earlier this year, and the show was called Bankruptcy. Remember, that was back in March, I think. Because the year for space started out with a couple of big bankruptcies, right? Now we see that OneWeb is back again, and they launched their satellites last week. What was it? Like, why did this happen, and how did OneWeb survive? And do you think there will be again more bankruptcies, as per what Rick said, with the too many launchers and too many rockets? What are your predictions for the financial market 2021?
Well, I mean, we're talking about venture capital, right? There'll be a ton of bankruptcies. I mean, that's just normal. That's not just space. Any sort of like venture capital you're looking at, depending what stage you look at, whether it's seed or Series A, Series B, right? You can look up the historical percentages. At the seed stage, you probably have 90% or so of the companies go bust. That's just part of the game.
Okay.
And the other thing I'd say is new space in its sort of latest incarnation. It's a relatively recent phenomenon, right? Of course, we've had like commercial space startups in the 90s and all along, but sort of like there's been another wave, I would probably say, kind of starting around 2010, 2012, some of the first companies being Planet, Spire, and so forth. So it's also recent enough that typically in like a new industry like that, and again, it's not new, I'm just saying the latest incarnation, the failures will typically come before the successes, because it just takes time to build a successful company. But if something is just screwed up in your business model, it'll fail, which we've seen with OneWeb, it'll fail within like a few years.
Yeah, to build on Raphael's point, and this is very important. Space is so high profile. Nobody really notices, maybe outside of the field, in various other industries, that 90% failure rate, because it's not glamorous. There's, we don't see them, and they aren't in the spotlight. But in space, we do. And space people also are notoriously idealistic, very idealistic people. But and so they take larger bets. They do, let's say, perhaps crazier things. But we have to understand, what we're looking at. We had a series of failures in the last year. And some people might look at that and say, well, there's some overwhelming thing that, that ties OneWeb with Vector, with Bigelow, et cetera, et cetera. No. Each one of those was a completely different reason that they went down. Vector had a problem with its management. Bigelow had a problem with its management and its family, with his family. They basically said, you got to quit spending our money. Even though his technology is great. I've actually seen it. It's awesome. I think he's still got 2 pieces up in orbit that are still functioning. OneWeb was a completely different failure. So we have to look at these things with a careful eye. And frankly, we probably could use a lot more, people like yourself, Stacey, who can look at this from an more expert insider point of view that is a little bit more nuanced than the way we opened the show with the landing blowing up, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, it was a failure. No, it wasn't a failure, right? He wasn't doing it. The landing wasn't the whole point of that thing. So we have to look at these things very carefully and maybe spend a little more time explaining to the public.
Absolutely. And trying more and failing more and then succeeding. We're coming on top of the hour. Do you think I can steal another 5-10 minutes of your time or not? Yeah.
5 minutes for me.
5 minutes. Okay. Then we'll do a very quick blitz for you. I'm copying this blitz into our comments so our viewers also can answer it. The first question would be, for you guys, quickly, give me, what's the space company of the year?
Go ahead.
I mean, really, I mean, I don't see how you'd answer that other than SpaceX, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Newcomer of the year. This should not be the same for the two of you. I hope it's not.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I like Space Fund. We're a newcomer. Again, I think Voyager, which kind of started at the end of 2019, but I love what Dylan Taylor is doing with Voyager. I think that is a great model. Later stage investing, things like that. But as far as hardware companies, Raphael, what do you got?
God, I don't know. I'm just trying to think one like about who really emerged in 2020, and then who should I mention, and like not be unfair to people. There's probably a few. I'm going to be lame and actually mention our common investment Space Perspective, because they basically started in 2020 and came out of stealth in mid 2020. Space Perspective, space tourism, stratospheric balloons. I think it just will help to bring many more people to, technically not to space, but to basically give them the overview effect.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I have to be cautious because I don't want to sound like I'm plugging companies we've invested in, but the whole point of our investing profile is to invest in good companies. So, I'm kind of caught there, but there's a company coming up called Sen in the UK.
Sure.
High resolution video from space. I think I've always wanted to see the live Earth video fireplace, on my cable selection. I think that's an awesome one that's very underappreciated. And then there's, I'm going to give a shout out, and this is going to confuse people who know me. I'm going to give a shout out to NASA and now former admin, because what they've done in terms of enabling private sector activities is pretty phenomenal. And there are a lot of I forget how many. We have the lunar exploration companies like Maston and some of these others, Intuitive Machines, and there's a third one I'm blanking on, that are getting funding finally, that are enabling them to look at landing and doing small returns. And I find that's an interesting contrast, because you've got the China National State Program, which is returning lunar samples, but I think through an enlightened partnership between the private and public sector, we're going to have 3 or 4 private U.S. companies that are going to be doing the same in the next 5 years.
So I realized I forgot one which also emerged in 2020, or was technically formed in 2020. So Rick mentioned Voyager, and the interesting thing is, again, as Rick mentioned, it's sort of a holding company model where you buy space companies. And there's another one which has done already, I think, 4 deals, which is called Redwire out of Florida, which is private equity backed. And for example, they bought Made in Space. So that's another one that came up in 2020.
Yeah, a very surprising deal, that one.
Oh, and we're on that. NanoRacks flying the airlock. That was good. And of course, Axiom, which you'll be seeing. I think Axiom's going to get a lot of spotlight in 2021 when they start flying people.
Next question is mission of the year.
I mean, it's obviously going to be like DM2 or Crew 1, but just in order to not pick those, then let me say the Shangji 5 lunar return mission.
I would actually go with the Chinese as well, because I think what they're doing is amazing and it's underappreciated in our hemispheres. So I go with China. Rick?
Yeah, I would have said Hayabusa, but they actually, and I was amazed how many journalists didn't realize this. They already did that many years ago also, sampled from a solar system object. So I'm going to have to say China. I agree.
So, sorry, I have to mention one other one, because I know Rick will know as well, is Dante Loretta and the whole team around OSIRIS-REx, which is basically the Comet sample return mission, which who had a touchdown in, I think it was October. I mean, that's just absolutely mind-boggling as well. Of course, they'll only come back, I think, in a couple of years, but the touchdown happened in October.
Yeah. No, it's a great year. There's so much happening despite COVID. I don't know. Best year for space. Or we were just paying attention. I think that might be the case. We were paying attention. Next, persona of the year. Don't give me Elon Musk, please. Surprise me. Please. Please.
Persona of the year.
Well, we know Elon Musk is like top, probably, right? Let's think of the second guy.
I just did a shout out to NASA administrator, and again, I think he deserves a lot. Is under his watch that the Artemis Accords and a lot of these other activities came out. The persona, that he would be a big one. So, what do you got, Raphael?
Oh God, I'm like holding myself back from saying Tom Cruise.
Why? That's great. Say Tom Cruise. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Between us here, of course, it's been so entertaining, like asking people, like, because it was actually possible to buy seats like on that flight with Tom Cruise.
Really?
For sale. And then some people, there was actually like a few people told me, like, why would I pay for like a seat to fly with Tom Cruise? But anyway, no, I was gonna say that because we need to look between us here. Probably everybody watching, we're still part of that space family we all know, which is like I always joke, like 1,000 to 2,000 people who are part of the space family. Every time you go to the space conference, it's those people, and we need to still bring space to many, many more people. Absolutely. And then just really to the masses. And think of Tom Cruise, whatever you want to think of Tom Cruise, but doing stuff like that, it'll bring space to more people.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts there. One is that it's not rockets that are going to get us into space. It looks like it's going to be egos.
Yep.
So Branson, Musk, Cruise. It's all about the ego, which is stronger than gravity. I think there's a jingle to be made there, a story to be told. But I think it's also important that we should recognize all of those people who aren't famous, who like the OSIRIS-REx team, the people on the ground at SpaceX. That oh my God, that was so incredible. The people you don't see every day, who are really dedicating their lives to making this stuff happen, and we need a lot more of them. So I think that's those are the personalities of the year. Everybody except the famous people.
Yeah. And
hidden figures.
I would go with the two ladies who did the first all-female spacewalk, Christina Koch and Jessica Meir. I think those ladies are very, very brave.
Spot on.
Very brave ladies. Shout out to ISU alum, Jessica Meir. And on this note, guys, I'm very sad to say that I think we should finish. It was a tremendous chat, a tremendous honor. Rick, Raphael, thank you so much for finding the time. I hope I'll see you back on this podcast soon. Merry Christmas, happy upcoming New Year. Thank you so much and see you soon. Bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Live long and prosper. Thanks.
Thanks.